Hey, everybody. Welcome to the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, what we do on this podcast is talk about what B2B sales and marketing leaders, operators, and experts are doing today to really break through and grow their businesses at exponential levels. Let's get it in the interview. At the end, I'll give you an update on my courses, and you can check out my website at b2brevenue.com, and it's Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn.
Hey, Rory, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Brian, thanks for inviting me and having me here. So, a little bit about myself. Where do we start? I have been a full-time digital marketer for 14 years, sophisticated jack of all trades for 8 of those years until I found digital advertising specifically for paid traffic and the art of customer acquisition and lead generation. So that's a bit of a summary.
Yeah, cool. And how'd you come to that conclusion?
Well, when I got started, I knew nothing about business. My background was completely in psychology, and I fell into online marketing, if you will say, to keep myself busy. It was 2006. I just graduated with a doctorate in clinical psychology, had a 6-month-old child, became a stay-at-home dad, got a little bored, needed an outlet to share with the world. So I found out all about marketing and building businesses and how you could do that online. And traffic was sort of the holy grail. And paid traffic in particular, if you could figure that out, you could write your own ticket, so to speak. And at the time, back in 2006, 2007, paid traffic was a secret. It was a secret society, smoke-filled rooms, couple guys smoking cigars, knowing it all. And it wasn't as widely discussed and open to the masses like it is today. So somewhere around, I want to say 2010, I was introduced to my first paid traffic opportunity, and it just opened up the world to what is possible. A lot of people tend to do JV and affiliate marketing, where they're relying on other people's email lists or relationships, chasing people down. And a lot of people in that space want to get away from it because paid traffic, again, you kind of are in control. And I say that loosely because you're never really in control of anything. There are varying degrees of control. So got really good at Facebook traffic, paid traffic, and decided to help other people because that was something I was good at, and it just took off.
And you focus on Facebook, or do you do other platforms as well?
So I specifically focus on Facebook. That is my gift, if you will. My team does offer other channels and platforms, and I have dedicated media buyers that only operate on those channels.
And why Facebook?
Facebook was the real opportunity when I started cutting my teeth in advertising 7 years ago.
Yeah.
It was up and coming. I was friends with a Facebook advertiser whose agency at the time was starting to take off, and he needed help. And I jumped on board, said, hey, let's do it. Because at the time, I was still very much a very sophisticated jack of all trades. This gentleman I would consider to be a pioneer when it comes to direct response marketing and direct response advertising on Facebook, and taught me just things that nobody else really knew what to do. Again, that's totally different landscape today. Lots of people know what to do. Lots of people, even more people, think they know what they're doing. But Facebook in particular, why it was for me, or why I focused there, other than that was the opportunity at the time, Facebook really opened up opportunity for anybody to advertise. What I mean by that, in contrast, the 64,000-pound gorilla, or 800-pound gorilla, the 800-pound gorilla was and is Google, but there was no alternative. And Google was and is much more complicated, takes much more time to get things going, whereas Facebook has made their interface to advertise much more user-friendly, where you can click the right buttons, set up the right targeting, and see results within, confidently within hours, certainly within 24 hours. Whereas with Google, yes, you'll see results. Yes, you'll see data, but you're not going to get the confidence that you're doing the right thing, sometimes for weeks, if not months.
Yeah. And who's your ideal customer? Is it B2C, small mom and pop shops? Is it SMB, enterprise?
Yeah, so good question. I would say that we're probably more B2C, in that a lot of the clients that we work with, they are small business owners, they are experts. We do serve a lot of physical product companies, so e-commerce, supplements. I wouldn't characterize many of them as B2B, because even when you're, let's say, selling coaching services, are you really doing B2B or are you really doing B2C? Yeah. We have done B2B. I would say that, really our sweet spot is going to be financial, health supplements, and e-commerce businesses that are established and already running $30,000 or more a month on traffic, and either need someone to take over because they've done as well as they can, or it's a business owner or somebody on the team who realizes, yes, they could keep doing it, but they have far more lucrative tasks to undertake and, generate a larger ROI and impact on the business than the media buying.
And what is that tipping point? Is it the dollar amount? Is it the expertise? Is it the time available? Because I've used the Facebook interface. It's not simple, but it's not hard either.
Yeah. So good point to clarify is that it's easier than most others, but by any stretch of the imagination, if you're just going in there, it's going to be Greek, and there's lots of stuff to figure out. Now, in terms of the tipping points, as far as is the question really, what would be the tipping point for a business owner to bring on a media buyer?
Yes.
So it's go ahead.
Compared to just having their kid do it, or having them spend one day a month setting it up and forgetting about it. I
think a lot of it, so there is no right metric. We've worked with clients who start out as little as $5,000 a month, and they just don't have the time or the expertise to build it themselves. I say, our ideal is 30 or more, because there are a lot more people today who are willing to spend $5,000 who don't have established funnels or established checkout processes or what I would consider a real business. Yeah. So they may have that $5,000 to spend, and then that's it, and they're gone, and it's a 30-day engagement, and that's not fun for anyone. I say $30,000 because, that's $1,000 a day that you're spending on ads. Usually people who are spending $1,000 a day on ads are seeing a good return, which again, there's no metric of, well, what's a good return? Some businesses, it could be 50 cents on the dollar. Some it might be $1 for $1, and some it might be $2 for every $1 spent. But usually at that level, they've got something that's proven, that's working, that they want to scale, that they want to pour gasoline on the fire. So that's why that number, it's very arbitrary. It could be 15, it could be 20, it could be 100,000. The point of the business owner, it really comes down to how many hats are you wearing? Let's say you have a small team and you're the CEO and the media buyer. Well, there comes a point where, well, yes, you can do that. You can run the ads. That's, I believe, a right brain activity. Being CEO tends to be a left brain activity. And those clash, and it's hard to mentally switch, especially on a dime if something comes up. So does that answer your question? Does that give you enough?
Yeah, it's a good start. And what do you typically see them doing wrong, since they're doing something already?
Oh, gosh. There's so much that people do wrong, even when they're doing things right. So basic fundamentals are typically done wrong. And what I mean by that are the strategy. A lot of people who make it to $1,000 a day and hit that barrier, that wall, have gotten lucky. And I say that again, hypothetical or in quotes, like they've gotten lucky. They've managed to figure some stuff out, but the problem is it's sort of built on a house of cards. So for instance, what they're doing works, but it's not scalable. What they're doing isn't sustainable over time. So you hear about a lot of people, particularly in e-commerce, who, they launch new ads every single day because they only work for 8 hours and then they die. Well, I mean, that's awesome. You've gotten to a certain point, but that's not sustainable. That's not scalable. That's not how, small businesses turn into larger small businesses into medium. You have to have something that's sustainable, something that's scalable, something that lasts more than 24 hours. So that's a pretty big problem, just basic strategy. There's also the concept of, what got you here won't get you here, or what got you here won't get you there. So you do have to realize, what does it take to go from being at, hey, I've reached it here, to get to here. Excuse me 1 second. In fact, we on our team, in our agency, I have media buyers that specifically get the account from 0 to 1,000, then 1 to say 3,000. And then we have media buyers that help people go from 3 to 10 to 15. It's a different skill set.
And how often do you see the ad just sucks?
How often do you say the ad sucks?
The ad sucks. They're putting it in front of the right people, but the ad is, they're asking to too much. They're going from ad to purchase, or attracting too many people who aren't going to buy.
Yeah, so it's a very general question, and for me anyway, so I'm going to answer, and then I want you to guide to make sure I give you the answer you want. So how often do I see it? I'd say 97 out of 100 ads that I see on a daily basis suck. They're garbage. Yeah. Some of that is because Facebook's platform, again, in bunny ears, has made advertising so easy. Over the last several years, media buying went from being an art to a commodity, with all these people teaching, here's how you run ads. And what was taught was the sizzle, not the steak. So the sizzle is, for every $1 you spend, you can get $5 back. And here's the ad that I did it. And it's like, that's BS. So first off, those numbers aren't realistic. They're not long-term sustainable numbers. The ads that people use to get there, a lot of times, again, they get lucky, or they're selling high ticket products. There's usually some X factor. So most ads just are not prepared to work well or work long. In terms of, how soon can you tell? I mean, I've been saying for 6 years now, give me $100 and I'll tell you whether or not we've got a good ad. And $100 is not a lot of money. And if you're selling a product that costs more than $100 to sell, what are you really going to find out? Well, the reason I say to give me $100 and I'll let you know is that $100 you can buy a lot of data. So for instance, if you're not getting a lot of clicks, something is wrong with your ad. It's not communicating the right message. If your CTR, so your click-through rate on that ad, is super, super low, it's not going to go higher. If it's super high, there's a chance it'll come down, but very rare does it ever go up. As far as, are you getting purchases, but people aren't buying, you have to look at all the other metrics. So if we stick with purchase, well, what's the step before it? Are we getting add to carts? If you're getting add to carts, but not purchases, then maybe now you have to figure out, is it the checkout page that's not converting? Have we spent enough money to push people out of add to cart to get that one purchase? And then, the step before that really comes back to, is it the ad? Does the ad suck? Meaning, are we just bringing in people who are looking and curious and aren't qualified? So for instance, let's talk tangibles for a second. You can have a great ad that leads to a lot of add to carts that doesn't lead to purchases. And the reason you find out it's a great ad is because it's moving people from the ad to the add to cart, but they're not qualified buyers. Well, why? Let's say, for instance, your product page, your sales page doesn't have a price. Well, people may be interested in your product. They click because they want to see the price. They see the price, they leave. That's a sales page offer. It's a product offer problem. If you're getting add to carts and you do get purchases, but the cost per purchase is too high, then you do have to go, all right, am I just bringing far too many people over who aren't qualified? And can I write a better ad or come up with better creative, i.e. the image or the video, to further qualify the right prospect?
And when you say Facebook, do you mean Facebook and Instagram, or you mean solely Facebook?
Great question. Anytime I say Facebook, for me, that does include Instagram. They are owned by the same company. They are the same self-serve platform for running ads. Yep.
Yeah.
Great question.
And do you care about desktop versus mobile, or?
At the heart of it, yes, but on the surface, no. Desktop, I mean, honestly, at this point, most traffic is mobile. A lot of purchasing decisions do happen on mobile. We don't discount desktop. Desktop does still account for and can account for a good amount of traffic and purchases and lead generation, whatever you're doing. Typically, desktop may be a little bit more expensive than mobile, but I'm not going to get caught up in the nitty gritty. I want sales.
Yeah. Oh, it also depends on your demographic, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
You know? And how about like Android versus iOS?
I personally don't care. I don't look at it. I don't generally, I really don't drill down that deep. And the reason I say that is a lot of businesses aren't sophisticated enough to need that. Okay. At the end of the day, does it matter? Can it make a difference? Abso-friggin-lutely. Yeah. So in some ways, my answer is, if you're an advanced traffic person, an advanced business owner, and you want to know what's going on, then yeah, you should be looking at that and figuring that out. But if you're going, all right, how do I start traffic? How do I spend $1,000 a day? How do I spend $2,000 a day? Very rarely is that going to be a significant issue, but it's a good data point to look at and consider. Great question.
Well, I think it depends on what market you are, but if you higher end, clearly it's iOS, They're on the latest device, right? Anyone who's got a 5-year-old Android phone isn't going to spend $1,000, right?
Well, let's, call
me wrong. I don't know.
Well, no, while we're talking, why don't we make this fun? Let's pull up, I'm going to pull up an ad account while we're talking here, and I won't share the screen or anything, just out of privacy for the clients, but I'm going to look at a high ticket e-commerce business we're working with right now. They are an anomaly. And I say that because I tell you that 5X ROAS is not necessarily sustainable or realistic. These guys right now, we spend between two agencies and 2 ad accounts, about $400,000 a month on ads.
Whoa.
And their minimum ROAS, I would say, is about 2.5. Last month was 4.25. And, so they're a higher ticket. They're a fortunate company in terms of having good ROAS like that. But it also happens to be like the right niche, the right industry. But let's say, again, I'm talking and I'm looking. So if I'm stammering at all, it's because I'm multi-processing on different monitors.
You got an ADD, I hear.
Yeah, a little bit. It does help. So let's take a look at the, what did you say? Device.
Yeah.
So let's look at last month. So we'll look at March. In this ad account, just to give the audience a full picture that they're not going to be able to see. Last month for this company, full transparency, we spent $174,000, $586.75. We had 2,137 purchases, cost per purchase $81.70 to generate $775,392.70 in sales for 4.44 ROAS. Again, this is an outlier. This is a unicorn. Anyone listening, you should not go, oh my God, I don't have those numbers, I suck, because they're not realistic. They're not realistic for most accounts. I'm pulling this up as an example, and really because this is the best volume account we have to look at the question of Android versus iOS.
And give us a sense of how much time it would take to manage that type of an account.
Ooh.
Is that a 1 day a week, 5 days a week?
Well, great question. So it's going to vary depending upon the state of the account, what's happening in the economy and the world around us. Our team has eyes on every one of our accounts every single day. There's not, so every day, and I'm talking 365. We look on Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, everything. 5-minute check-in. What's going on? I'd say on average, if I averaged it out, maybe an hour a day.
Yeah. Okay.
That's because this is a fairly good built account.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're just starting out with an account, or whether it's a smaller budget and you're still figuring things out, you can spend, 2 to 3 hours a day on the account. The interesting thing is, Brian, which you may be getting at underneath, or at least I'm going to take advantage of an answer, is your time is not necessarily spent in the account pushing buttons as much as it may be analyzing the data, coming up with new creative, because once you make a change in the account, so if I scale a campaign, I'm done for 24 hours. There's nothing more I can do. You have to give the algorithm 24 hours to adjust. So, and I say that, and we can bring it full circle to what I mentioned earlier about, a lot of people who tend to start their ads every day. They may be in there 4 or 5 times a day scaling. And that's madness. Like, you're not going to grow a sustainable, scalable business that way. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And how many of your customers are looking just for branding versus complete attribution to purchase?
Very few are just branding, to be honest. We are straight direct response. So I would say all of the accounts we start are more direct response than anything. In fact, I almost refer to it as like cutthroat marketing, because we just go right in for the sale. And there are people who are like, well, what about, building that relationship with your client? And what about sharing content and delivering value? I fully believe in that, and you should include that as part of your strategy. The issue with the approach really is, people who come into paid traffic, they think it's really easy. So let's do branding and direct response at the same time. And it's like, well, when you're spending a small amount of money, anything you put towards branding takes away from the meat. So once we hit a certain return, then I'll pour on more for relationship building, branding, which again, I loosely use the word branding. I don't run or manage, nor will I ever do a branding campaign like a Coca-Cola, an attorney's office, where it's just literally, let's get in their faces. I want to be able to track back something, and as much as possible to as much as I can.
And how about as far as retargeting? Is it you either purchase or you're dead to me?
Again, early on, again, in that sort of cutthroat stage, it's buy or die, or buy, or I'm going to follow you up until you buy or die.
Yeah.
Again, the more traffic you have going to your website, the more granular you can get in setting up sequential action-based retargeting, where you can open up that sales cycle and say, okay, someone's here, they're still at the top of the funnel, I want to give them some content and value to consume about my product.
Yeah.
And then you can go ahead.
How legitimate do you find their targeting?
Facebook's?
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic.
Really?
I think where a lot of people go wrong or get frustrated with it is they don't understand how to properly use it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done things like, I'm targeting men 25 to 35 in San Francisco, and then I'll get somebody in Tennessee, an old woman liking the ad.
Yeah. So what's interesting there, Brian, what a lot of people don't realize, and again, a lot of people don't teach it because it's not the sizzle, is that with social ads, when I pay to hit my target, if my target, who I want, likes that ad, comments on that ad, shares that ad, it's no longer an ad and it becomes a post.
content. Yeah.
So now anybody outside of your targeting is fair game for liking that post, commenting on that post, buying your product. So in some ways, I don't want to say it has a viral element to it. It's more, I mean, it can go viral, but it's that organic element. So you've got the paid element that's intentional, and then you have the bonus organic element where you're going to get outliers and people who aren't who you're targeting, and you just have to realize that. And some of it's beyond your control.
And how often do you see them changing the algorithm enough that you notice it?
Oh gosh. Great question. I don't know. I know, and so here's why I'm really thinking about this. Like, I don't ever just spit out stock answers.
Like, you might like have a eureka moment, and all of a sudden now you get it. Okay, I need to do this. This variable really counts.
Yeah. So, I mean, interesting. And I mean, there's two parts to that element. So the first question is, how often do you notice the algorithm being updated? 4 or 5 years ago, it was very infrequent, and you would know something's coming because there'd be issues with submitting an ad, publishing an ad, appealing. Something would happen. That certainly has accelerated over time. In fact, I think 2018, 2019, we'd start seeing it every quarter, every month. Like, it just would accelerate. Lately, I don't see it a lot. Yeah. I hesitated to respond because maybe it's just I'm so attuned to it now that I'm not really paying attention to it like I was. It is an ongoing thing. Facebook is constantly trying to improve that algorithm to give you better results. And to your point now, maybe you're noticing something and you have that eureka moment. Because we're direct response, we're always looking at the data. And if I notice that all of a sudden, like, let's talk mid-March when the world or the US shut down because of COVID, our ad costs dropped. So we noticed that. Yeah. And you have to take stock and go, well, what just happened? In that situation, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, you can know. But a common theme, for instance, is, which was really interesting given COVID, end of March, early April, some of our clients are saying, hey, what happened to our results? Is this because of Corona and the ongoing development? I said, we don't know. It could be. It's very live. We're not sure what's happening. But also remember, late March, early April, that's the close of Q1 and beginning of Q2. Something always happens. Yeah. And you have to be mindful of that. And if you're not thinking of it, it can blow right past you, and you can just look at the data and go, oh, well, what happened? My ad bombed. I have to shut it off.
Well, and that's the hardest part about marketing is there's so many variables, and trying to give attribution of what's helping and what's hurting is really hard to tell.
Yep.
How about as far as like lookalike audiences? Is that something that you find valuable?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'll give you a rubric. So I mentioned conversion events. I'm thinking out loud now. Did I have this conversation with you, or did this happen earlier? So with lookalike audiences, they are incredibly, incredibly valuable. The more conversion events you have, so the more data for that custom audience to build the lookalike, the more data points, the better it will typically be. Yeah. What do I want? I want a minimum of 1,000 conversions before I really get excited about a lookalike audience. So if we're talking purchases, I want 1,000 purchases. Now, if somebody comes and says to me, well, I only have 100, can I make one? Yeah, 100's the minimum. But just understand that your data is going to be broad. Whereas if you have 200, it gets narrower, 300, it gets narrower, 400, 500, until it's really tight. So you just know that it may not be as fantastic as it can be. You absolutely want to get to lookalike audiences. Lookalike audiences should be a big part of your strategy. In fact, one thing that I've been really impressed with lately is value-based lookalike audiences that you can either build off of a spreadsheet that you'll import into the ads manager that has the customer's purchase value or LTV, Or you can build it off of the pixel, where you pick the purchase event and then it creates it off all the history of the purchases. And those are just a whole nother level, really impressive of late.
Cool. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to follow you and connect with you?
Well, thank you. I appreciate you asking for that. Anybody who wants to reach out or learn more can go to helpwithads.com. And Brian, if I can share one last thing with you and your audience before we go.
Definitely.
So we were looking in that ad account, and you want to know about devices. So for the month of March, one campaign, which was a retargeting campaign, 155 purchases. Well, let's break it up. 386 purchases as a whole for that campaign. 155 of them went to Android smartphones with an average cost per purchase of $28.55. 215 of them went to iPhones for an average cost per purchase of $33.71. So very big differences, very important differences. And one might say, well, do I want to spend more on Android because they're buying more, or their costs are less? This is why it goes back to I don't care. When you've got that volume of purchases and the difference is 28 versus 33, and let's say I'm targeting 50 or less, I'll take each and every one of them.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out b2brevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or you know what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to b2brevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.